more of a floor raiser in order to warrant a type of big-time contract that he is likely going to, demand with him and his agent when extension talks come about, whether this offseason or a little later in the year, whatever it may be. I think the Niners are going to have a really tricky decision, and I'm not sure the right move is to give him a fat contract. Christian, what are your take on that?
Yeah, Brock Purdy is probably the best cog that you can ask for, but he's not an engine. And like we've seen engines across the league elevate, as you put it, their teammates, make their weapons better than who they are. It seems like Brock complements the weapons that surrounds him, but that means when you pay somebody like that, you can't pay the weapons at the same time. I'm with you. I'm really, for 2 games when CMC was hurt, Ayuk was gone, even Debo was gone, it was only Kittle, I saw Brock Purdy play some pretty good football. But that's the problem. It was just 2 games. Like, he's been weak the rest of the season, and we've seen this 49ers team fall out of the playoffs, large in due part to his inability to work with less than what he's used to.
And it's a good point. He has played good football this year, and you can't necessarily listen. I can't give Bryce Young every excuse in the book because of the supporting cast and because it's not working all around him. And I can't necessarily not do that with Brock Purdy. 2 things can be true. Brock Purdy is a good quarterback. There is no doubt in my mind that Brock Purdy is probably in the top 50% of starting quarterbacks, if not around that 50% range of starting quarterbacks that are starting today in the NFL. But another thing can be true that, like you said, he's a good cog. He is not the engine. You don't necessarily need him to be the engine in order to pay him. But he is more so than I think anybody else in the entire league, he is a big mirror of what is around him. He will reflect whatever is being shown and pointed at him, whether that is an excellent supporting cast on top of an excellent coaching staff and a huge brand and franchise. He is a reflection of that. And it has been quite evident in the past couple of weeks that when that reflection is not as clean, not as pretty as what it has been, he will suffer due to that as well. So if you're going to give somebody a contract, and especially in the contract of the realm of $60 million, that's probably the benchmark nowadays for a market reset, despite salary cap increases. It's a whole other conversation. But Brock Purdy is somebody who can, take it through to the finish line, but he already needs a lap head start. He is not somebody that is going to will the team, put the rope over his shoulder and drag them to the promised land. And you don't necessarily need him to be that, but he hasn't shown any ability to do that. And all of a sudden, let's think about the flip side of things. Brock Purdy and his agent can walk into John Lynch's office, the San Francisco 49er general manager, and he could say 2 things. He could say, number one, I haven't complained one bit. I'm being paid $900,000, and I know I was drafted at the bottom of the draft rankings, and I didn't deserve to be drafted higher, but I have done nothing but show up and play and be available. That is one thing. Number 2 is everybody around me, if I'm Brock Purdy, on this team has gotten market setting, market resetting, and unbreakable contracts that have lasted into there were holdouts, they were into training camp. I'm going to get my money no matter what. And more often than not, the Niners will balk and decide to pay that contract. So all of a sudden, when I'm the most important position, most important player on the team in a lot of ways, all of a sudden I cannot demand this type of money because of what? Because I'm not Christian McCaffrey? When McCaffrey doesn't play, plays in an expendable position in comparison to me being the quarterback? So I understand that position. That is the fight back, Christian, is Brock Purdy can walk in there and be like, hold on a second. I didn't play. You guys rolled out there with Josh Johnson, and you guys got absolutely destroyed when it mattered in the NFC Championship game. And then all of a sudden I come back and we play, and I'm outplaying Mahomes at a certain point in the Super Bowl, and we were a couple plays away from winning that game. It's a tricky spot. I don't know what the Niners are going to do here, but from what I am seeing this year, I'm not sure it's the right decision to invest so much capital into what Brock Purdy offers.
So then the other options you have are hitting the free agent market and bidding for the one guy that's available, right? Sam Darnold. And then you also have the draft, which if they could turn Mr. Irrelevant into a competent, and maybe they scouted someone that way, or maybe they kind of curated him to be very competent and a good quarterback, Brock Purdy, or he could just find someone else like that. And it's easier said than done to just find somebody good enough to bring into the Super Bowl, even with all the tools around you. It'd be very funny.
Brock Purdy, of course, is under contract for next year. So you don't have to. This is not a pressing issue right now. But why would Brock Purdy want to go out there next year making basically $900,000, losing 70% of it to taxes in California, when all of a sudden he has the opportunity to coordinate an extension in the offseason? It's buying low, if you want to call it that, if you're the Niners. But if you could get some sort of a bargain for Brock Purdy, he's worth more than what Baker's making. But he is probably going to be in the same realm of probably what Darnold's going to get. And I would, if I'm a betting man, I would say that's in the 40s. I think that if I were to place worth in terms of annual salary, I think him and Darnold and Baker are probably in the similar positions. Now, I don't think that he is going to take that amount of money. I think he's going to ask for more because of the postseason success he has had. But from what I saw yesterday in that Dolphin game, Purdy was not very good at all. And it was in Miami. It wasn't necessary. You're not in Green Bay. You're not sitting there in minus 20 degrees. You're at Hard Rock Stadium. You're in Miami, Florida. I know you're across the country. Kittle was playing. Debo was playing well. Your defense was pretty healthy. Could beat the Dolphins. I know you were eliminated from the postseason before the game, but you have a great coaching staff. You're running out of excuses here. If you're Brock Purdy, you're going to have a decision to make. And the quarterbacks and the agents all work in the same bubble of we're going to just continue to reset the market as best we can and as much as we can. So I would be surprised if he accepted anything under $55 million a year. Now, the question is it in the Niners' interest to really balk at that and give him that money? There's a serious conversation to be had about if that is the juice worth the squeeze.
Yeah, it's kind of starkly close to the Dak Prescott situation, because it looked like for a second to be one last ride for Dak, and then bang, opening the NFL season on that Sunday morning, he gets the contract where, okay, Dak's been good. At times, Dak has been great, but yeah, Dak has had a lot of weapons along his side, too. I mean, we're not going to ignore the great years early in his career where Zeke was a formidable factor, and we're not going to ignore that CeeDee Lamb might be a top 5 receiver in the NFL right now, along with a couple of great defensive teams that the Cowboys have had. And he hasn't made a conference championship game yet, despite all of that being known.
Right.
Cowboys still paid Dak. Maybe there's less years attached to it, of course. Dak has been a Cowboy much longer. This would be his 3rd contract with the Cowboys, opposed to Brock Purdy's 2nd. But I wonder how comparable those situations are.
Yeah, I don't know. I personally think that Prescott is a better player than what Purdy offers because he is doing it with a coaching staff that is not necessarily as formidable as the Niners. The supporting cast, without a doubt, is better with what San Francisco has to offer. And I'm not saying Dallas doesn't have a good supporting cast, but it's not to the level of what San Francisco has. But Brock Purdy has the benefit of postseason success, which Prescott doesn't.
Yeah.
Prescott still got paid. So one side has, Purdy, who has won and played well in the playoff games.
Yeah.
He has played well. It's not like Purdy's coming in and he's coasting. Purdy's coming in. Purdy went drive for drive with Mahomes. And I cannot take that away from him. So off of that, I think that might be enough to get him paid. But there has to be questions. That's all I'm saying.
So then, I had the options incorrectly. What are the options? Just let Purdy play out this contract? And then what would he say? Like you said, walk in and say, I'm worth more than this, and then not play?
Yeah, bank on a bargain, I think, would be the best case scenario for both sides. Brock Purdy is making generational wealth. Well, this is the optimist of me thinking. This is the franchise builder. This is what I thought Trevor Lawrence was going to do as a Jacksonville Jaguar fan. I thought that Brock Purdy and the quarterbacks that kind of get it, that they understand that they're the cog, not the engine. If I like that, I'm going to keep stealing that. They understand that, they're the wheels. They're not the main part. They might not ask for the same amount a la Brady because they realize how important it is to build around said quarterback instead of put yourself in a position like the Bengals where they're going to have $100 million banked into 2 commodities and all of a sudden you can't pay anybody else.
Yeah,
You'd think he'd learn from that? But I think these agents, players' unions, and the quarterbacks together, care way too much about making entirely too much money.
I think
that's what